All right, guys. So Invincible season 3 is here. Thankfully, it was not a years long wait, like in between seasons 1 and 2. I hope that Amazon has their schedules in order, and so we'll be getting the show on a more annual basis from now on. Like TV used to be. I don't know what happened in Hollywood where now we're having like multiple year long breaks in between shows. It's weird, cringe, don't like it. But anyways, here we are. And I will say the first bit of this will be spoiler free, and then I'll do a bit of a more spoilery deep dive into the first 4 episodes. And yes, it is the first 4 episodes. I didn't get around to reviewing the first three that dropped last week, so I'm just doing this first four, but I will be trying to do weekly reviews from here on out. So spoiler free thoughts. It's great. I really love the deep dive that we're doing here when it comes to Mark's morality and his philosophy around being a hero and his philosophy around what we should be willing to do in order to save the world. And I love the way that, it contrasts with Cecil specifically, where it's almost like a Captain America Civil War situation, right? Where it's this like genuine conflicting ideologies between our heroes in a way that feels nuanced, in a way where it doesn't feel clear cut, where you can see like both sides. And yeah, I'm really loving that aspect of it. I think Invincible, as always, it does a really great job with its side characters. Where like I am invested in what's going on with Rexplode. I am invested in what's going on with Alan the Alien. Like, actually, as we saw in the last season, Mark has a little brother. What they do with his little brother and what they're doing with his little brother is really fascinating. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a lot. It's a lot like, oh, that's going in a direction that's not good. um. So yeah, like my main criticism is just animation. Like Jeff Bezos, you are a trillionaire. You have so much money. Why are we, in order to like have like an Indian like NPC side character, why are we reusing Debbie? Why are we reusing Debbie, making her skin brown and giving her a red dot to signify that she's Indian? Like, Jeff, you are a trillionaire. Can you please just give this show some more money? Like, did you have to give fucking Mr. Breast as much money as he gave him to make his shitty ass game show? We could have used that money for Invincible. You know what I mean? Um, and to be fair, I do cut Invincible a little bit of slack just because it's an hour long drama that's being done in animation, and so like I used to be like, I'll cut them a little bit of slack, especially if we want them to be getting these out in every year. It's like there's a difference between this and like your standard 25-minute episode Saturday morning cartoon. But then you also have stuff like Arcane, where it's like you look at what they're doing with Arcane, and I'm pretty sure those are like hour-long episodes, and it's just like, you know what? No, fuck you, Jeff. You have a bunch of money. Hire more animators. This show could look a lot better. But I will say, where the animation lacks, I think like literally everything else about the show always makes up for it. Where the direction, right, in terms of storyboarding and the actual action and stuff that's happening on screen, like it's all very well directed. It's all very well like executed in terms of like cinematography, even though it's not it's animation, but you know what I mean. Sound design is always really great in Invincible. Like the soundtracks, all the songs that they pick do a good job of elevating it, but it just the animation could be so much better, and it's annoying that it isn't. But at the end of the day, man, it's a solid comeback. Like I'm still very invested in everything that's going on. Um, so yeah, now let's get into some spoilery stuff. So I like how it ends with Mark training. Like I really like seeing like a Superman type character actually having to work out and get like physically stronger. It's like I feel like we've never really seen, or I'm sure we have in some adaptation, but I've never seen like Superman working out. Like him like trying to figure out ways in order to physically exert himself so that he can get stronger. I really like seeing that. I'm really liking Rex Splode. Like it literally does seem like him getting shot in the head. He got like the assholeness that got shot out of his head. Um, and it's not that he's lost all of his personality, right? It's not that he's not going to yell at people. It's not that he's not going to be sarcastic with somebody. But like he's way more of a bro than he was before getting shot in the head, right? Like his friendship with Mark is actually really neat at this point, and his loyalty, right, that we see that we'll get to a bit later on, is really nice to see. So yeah, Rex is great actually. Like he's one of my favorite characters at this point. One thing that I will say is I'm not crazy about, or I guess what I should say is I do feel like we're getting to the point where the stakes of the show are getting lessened and lessened, because like that episode where they're fighting the Serpent Society or whatever, and Kate and Ray and Rex, they all end up dying. Like, or well, Rex doesn't die, but Kate and Ray end up dying. It's like that's like a really brutal scene, and the fact that everybody that was involved in that conflict is just still alive. It's a little like, okay. It's like I don't know. I feel like the next time there's a scene like that, I don't know if it's gonna entirely hit the same. But I will say, like, at the end of the day, like, I do really like all these characters, so I'm not that upset that we're getting more with them. But it just at the end of the day lessens the stakes of everything. Although I will say I did like meeting Kate's brother, Multi Paul, which is fun, I guess. He starts beating the shit out of Rex because he thinks his sister is dead. I thought that scene was interesting, and it's also just like we're seeing a lot of Mark getting more comfortable with killing people. And to be fair, it is in situations like this where him killing Multi-Paul is not necessarily him killing Multi-Paul, because in order to truly kill him, he would have to like snuff out all of the versions of him. So but even still, it's like the fact that Mark was very comfortable with just like slaughtering the different versions of Multi-Paul. It's a little unsettling, I must say. We're also dealing with everything having to do with Oliver, and I really do think that Oliver is like kind of a fascinating character because he is really smart, right? Like he's, because of his like bug genetics, I guess, like he's developing at a rapid rate, and he's like in this weird state where he has like the immaturity of a child, but he's not stupid, and he's like rationally thinking about why he wants to be as like a superhero, why he wants to use his powers, how he wants to use his powers. And it's like Debbie and Mark are having to deal with this kid who's like rationalizing why he should be killing people, with this kid who essentially like has the same ideology as Omni-Man, as the Viltrumites. And he's not, and like he's going to be able, and he can logically like go through his thought process. It's a very fascinating character, actually. And yeah, like he did straight up kill the Mauler twins, right? And it wasn't in a moment of desperation necessarily, right? Like he thought they deserved to die, and so he did it. And seeing the way that he like switches to turn into like a little innocent kid crying when like Cecil and everybody are like staring at him, it's like, yeah, Oliver is just a really fascinating character. And yeah, obviously the whole thrust of these first four episodes uh is the battle between, or like the ideological battle between Mark and Cecil, where like Mark and Debbie don't want Cecil to have anything to do with Oliver. But it's like, when you look at how Oliver's turning out, it's like, well, Mark and Debbie are not necessarily doing the best job. It's like, not that Cecil would necessarily be able to do a better job. In fact, he would turn him into potentially even more of a monster, but still. It does make it seem like Mark and Debbie clearly need help. But, the fact that Cecil is, working with Saint Clair, Ezra Miller, who I wonder if the fact that we haven't seen any footage with Saint Clair is because they didn't want to record any more lines with Ezra Miller. Although they could just recast, to be honest with you. But still, I think it's funny that we never actually saw any of Saint Clair, but we're still seeing the after effects of it, right? With Rick still going through some shit, and Mark learns that he's still using the robots. So it's like, but that's what's great about these first 4 episodes, because it's like, you can, like, Cecil wouldn't necessarily have done a better job with Oliver, because he potentially could have turned him into an even bigger monster, because he's working with these horrible people, right? Like, he's still working with Darkwing and whatnot. But it's also like, you also understand where Cecil would be coming from, right? Because it's like, humanity needs, to some extent, like, these, like, killer robots that can stand up to Invincible and Omni-Man. It's like, when you look at what happened with Omni-Man, it's like you almost can't blame Cecil, really, at the end of the day, right? And there's that great line where he's like, you can either be the good guy or you can be the guy that saves the world. Like, you can't be both. And it's like, you can't help but also understand why Cecil is going as far as he's going when you look at what happened with Omni-Man. So I'm really loving everything that they're doing with the ideological divide here. I also like that we see young Cecil. We see that he was just like Mark, where he had to fight these, like, terrorist guys, and he used to be like Mark, where he was like, no, what's the point of trying to reform these people? Like, I don't work with criminals; they deserve to rot in hell. But we actually, like, see him slowly over time getting the experience, realizing the realities of the world. And it's like, it's funny how we're probably going to see Mark go throughout this entire series. Like, we're probably going to, like, slowly see Mark get, like, hardened in a sense, and probably realize that Cecil is doing this for a reason. And by the way, I'm like, I should say this as well, I'm, like, low-key talking about from experience of having read the Invincible comic books. But I will say this, just to be crystal clear, I don't actually remember if Mark ever folds on this point and ever, like, truly sees Cecil's point of view. That is a genuine prediction on my part, because I don't actually remember where Mark's ideology ends up at the end of the at the end of the comic book run. But my guess is that Mark probably does end up seeing Cecil's point of view. But yeah, again, this is just another thing where we end up seeing a scene where, like, Cecil gets his skin burned off, and then they bring him back, and it's just like, again, they're just like, they're lowering the stakes, where it's like, literally anything can happen to these characters, and they can just get brought back in some capacity. And it's like, okay, so whatever. It's not that big of a deal, but still. I like that the team ends up seeing Cecil go crazy, putting a bomb or whatever in Mark's head, and yeah, you get I keep on comparing it to Captain America: Civil War, but you see, like, half of the team leave, which is pretty interesting. But it's like, you genuinely see both points of view, where it's like, yeah, how can you work for a guy that is willing to put a bomb in your head, that is willing to do anything for his agenda? But then you can also understand from the perspective of Omni Man, or not Omni Man, of Immortal, where he's like, hey, yeah, is it hard sometimes being a hero? Sure, but like at the end of the day, like these are the things that are necessary. Like again, it's interesting, right? You have Immortal and Cecil who have gone through the throes of life, and they just kind of realize that a lot of this more darker, edgier stuff in saving the world is just necessary. So it's very interesting, the dynamic there. Um, but yeah, also a really great moment when Mark essentially breaks up with Cecil and says, "We're done. I'm done working for you, you old bitch, you boomer." Oh, and I also love this flashback where we learn that Cecil always knew that Nolan was a bad guy, but he was just like biding his time. Obviously, he was smart enough to know that trying to stop Nolan prematurely is not worth it because they literally can't. And so it's just funny knowing that the entire time, like Cecil was suspicious of Nolan. I really like that touch, and it kind of like paints even the first season in a little bit of a different light, which I always love it when shows do that. Um, I will say I don't want to talk too much about the whole like time travel storyline, just because it like if you've read the comics and you know the overall story, it's like they touch on a lot of stuff that it's like I know exactly what they're talking about. But I don't want to like talk about it even because this is only a spoilery discussion for the people that watch the show. I don't want to give too much insight about what I know from the comic book, so I don't want to talk too much about it. Um, but yeah, we do see Mark straight up killing the Immortal, which is again like these are very particular situations, right? With Mark, like killing the what is it, the multiples? Like we see him killing the versions of him, not necessarily a real kill. We see him killing Immortal, not necessarily a real kill because Immortal wanted to die, but we did have that super real kill with Angstrom Levy, and we're seeing Mark like slowly get more comfortable with killing, and it's a little scary. It is. But at least like Mark does feel guilty about it, and he has that talk with Amber. Not Amber, sorry. Eve. And yeah, speaking of Eve, I do like their relationship. I like Mark being a retard that told Eve about her future self, which is really pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like them being together is pretty obvious, and I like that they finally got around to it. Speaking of Amber, though, she is back. I just think it's endlessly funny that after the backlash to the first season, it does feel like the writers are really overcompensating and trying to make Amber be just like the most reasonable person possible. Even though it's not like she was out of character or anything, right? Like it actually makes complete sense that Amber wouldn't care that Mark and Eve are in a relationship. But it's just funny that they really make sure to have Amber go like, "What? Me? No. I'm glad you guys are in a relationship. I always wondered if you guys would do it." But it's just funny. Really big highlight, of course, is Alan trying to recruit Nolan. I really like their little bromance that they're brewing up with these two characters. Love seeing Battle Beast again. I like seeing them recruit Battle Beast as well. And I like how Nolan he truly ends up deciding to join the fight when he sees the Viltrumite beating up Alan. Like I do like that Nolan truly is changing, right? Like he truly is accepting the more human side of him. And we see him truly rejecting the Viltrumite-ness of him. Um yeah, like I think that the show has done an exceptional job of taking this character that did this horrific thing in that first season and actually making it believable. Like his redemption actually believable. I appreciate that. And I will say it is like in direct contrast to how you might feel about Cecil, right? Where it's like, how can you be rooting for Nolan to to redeem himself, to change, but then condemns Cecil for essentially trying to do the same thing with other villains. It is hypocritical to a certain extent. Like, Cecil is right in that. And then we get the big bomb that that truly changes everything, right? We learned that there are only 50 like pure-blooded Viltrumites in the galaxy, and I actually do remember this moment specifically when it happened in the comic books, because that was one of those major like, oh shit, because the Viltrumite threat has seemed pretty insurmountable up until now, and I love that moment because it's like, oh, this is doable. Like, this fight is feasible, that they can win this actually. So I really love that moment. But yeah, man. Beyond that, I like seeing Rex and Ray be a couple. I kind of like the whole thing about Ray wanting to be normal, right? Wanting to cook dinner, but it then being like interrupted, and she kind of realizes that she can't be normal, which was actually pretty sad. I think it's hilarious that these guys are back. They were like teased at the end of the first season, and then they just skipped them over in the second season, and now there was randomly a side plot with this character, with this like mob boss character. It's like, okay, sure, I guess he's back. We'll see if they do anything interesting with him. Invincible also got a new suit. I like it. I know they've talked about how it's kind of like they view it as the black suits for Spider-Man, how it's used to represent a more serious and edgier time in Mark's life, which I think is cool. And I do think it adds to Mark's angst in that way. Although, okay, again, it's them lowering the stakes, but apparently Angstrom Levy is alive and he's spying on Mark. I'll be honest, like, this is also a point where my memory of the comics is fleeting, where it's like, I don't remember if Angstrom Levy came back in the comics after Mark killed him. So I honestly don't know where this is all going. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that I just straight up didn't remember if they were in the comics or not. Like, seeing young Cecil, like, I don't remember if that was in the comics. Like, I have no memory of it. And I like that, actually. I like not knowing everything. I like being surprised by stuff. So I'm actually happy where I'm at in my comic book memory. So yeah, that's basically it. That's all I have to say about the first 4 episodes. Really good start. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that's happening here especially like with Mark facing Cecil and like mowing through the robots, and like that feels like season finale material. I always thought, like, watching the trailers, I always thought that this season was going to end with Mark and Cecil breaking up. Very interesting that they're opening with it. I'm actually like now thinking about like what could possibly end up being the season finale. I have a couple ideas, but I won't mention them. But yeah, either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.